So what did we do? Well, we got organized and formed teams. So when we started, actually, Vinay's campaign had already been going, and so we actually took a lot of steps from them and organized ourselves and defined roles and kept the structure really loose, and I'll get into that in a little bit further. But essentially, we needed some sort of structure to figure out how we can execute more efficiently. We built brands. This was actually really key because Vinay had his own site, and so when we decided to start Sameer's campaign, we had to determine whether we would piggyback on Vinay's campaign, form our own campaign, and I think fundamentally we didn't want to really draw away from Vinay's campaign and anything. We wanted to add to it, and so I think that was a key thing, is that figuring out exactly how to position ourselves and to make it better for everyone involved. And I'll get into that as well. We created an architecture, so a lot of the tools that we had in place and kind of the roles and responsibilities, there was a lot of work that was put in there. And then once that kind of was set up, we needed to go out and recruit. So to get people on the ground, to help run the drives, to do a lot of the grunt work. And so that was a big effort, and so we did that, and then executed like crazy. So like I mentioned, there was kind of two teams, and these are kind of the rough roles that we had put together. And what really made a lot of sense was to actually, instead of combining teams and making kind of a larger entity that was much harder to move and mobilize because time was an issue, we actually defined two parallel teams that actually formed these bridges and were able to work together. So we defined team leads that would communicate across teams and basically run each of the campaigns in parallel. So that was just how we took it. Sure.
If you talk to the Obama campaign, they will tell you that one of the big spots they missed was they really didn't do a good job of regional teams. They made it so that my Barack Obama was at a national level website, and the ability for the local level to be just as effective, if not more effective, such that the first place you went was the regional, and then you got networked into the national. It's incredibly smart that there's a very clear connection between national and regional.
Right, and I think another point that was pretty important was that we were kind of all in it together, right? And so people would be able to get questions asked of them, and there wouldn't be an answer. We could kind of reach out to the broader team and figure out whether it was through a formal organization or just through our network, and be able to get people answers about how to do various things. So I think that was pretty helpful as well. So yeah, as I mentioned, basically there was two separate campaigns. We actually created a separate site for Sameer specifically. And so yeah, again, back to like the Help Sameer side, Help Vinay, was that the story for this actually is very important. In that it has to be a personalized story. So the photos and the pictures, the photos and Sameer's blog, Vinay's blog, the things that they're writing, people get much more engaged when it's personalized and feel that they need to take more action, which is essentially what we wanted to invoke. So it made sense for us to form our own website independently. And then we also collaborated and kind of formed this common domain. That's just the same website, but it felt like it's not just these individual stories, it's also these guys working together. So yeah, it's more of the same. Both of these sites and campaigns are still going right now, so these sites are active. There's a lot of collateral on there. And that's one of the things that I think Robert will touch on, but we want to kind of do something with all this stuff, all this effort that we had put together. There's just a lot of information there, and it just needs to be pieced together. So just touching real briefly on the kind of architecture that we put together for the tool. So there was two sides of it. One was for the team, what we needed to help us facilitate our campaign and collaborate with one another. So we did, like I say, Google Groups, Google Docs, phone bridges. We had conference calls that we'd set up, and just sample distribution lists that we reach out to. On the registration side, yeah, there's a lot of things that Sandeep actually had quite a bit of things that he put on Vinay's campaign that we piggybacked on, but just different tools that were used to reach out to people, and I think some of them are listed here. And then yeah, we just executed like crazy.
You'll see the ideas are not that different from starting a company, right? This was our own startup. These were two startups coming together. And the volume of things that we had to get done around recruiting, around building the brand, around building awareness, were very consistent with what you would do when you have your own startup. And so the ideas that you generate, it's very important to think about it like a business and to get the commitment from everybody who's going to be on your team to be very serious about it and to be very focused on clear goals and very clear metrics. So the strategy, this is like, it looks really pretty when you kind of tie it all together in retrospect, but the idea was we needed an instant brand and we needed to mobilize thousands of people very, very quickly. And so the idea of creating an instant brand was to use both social media and traditional media to build awareness, and then in terms of mobilization, a very, very precise and very clear call to action. And that consisted of two things. One was most people don't know what it means to be part of the bone marrow registry. I mean, it sounds scary, right? Everything we sort of hear and know about it peripherally, it sounds painful. It's unclear as to what that exactly means. So education was a huge part of our focus. We didn't realize that right away. We sort of had to step back and say, wait, first we need to tell people what it means to be part of the registry. And second is the call to action to get registered, which today is actually very, very simple and very quick and easy. It's a cheek swab, and you sort of put it in an envelope and send it off to the registry. It just takes a matter of minutes. So putting this whole thing together, this idea was we need to build awareness. We need to create sort of a very clear call to action. And the strategy was to build a brand like overnight, instantly build the brand, and mobilize thousands of people very quickly. And we did that through traditional media, through social media around building awareness. And then the call to action, we have various ways of promoting and building education. And then the call to action for registration was really around holding drives throughout the country, all over the place. And you can see some of the components here. One of the things that Dale has done is we've hyperlinked all the assets behind these things. So you guys can go and take a look at all the various creative assets, all the information behind what it means to have had a telemarketing campaign, pledge lists, drive locations throughout the country. And so all of the stuff is online. And the reason is we want to see this repurposed and reused to help others. But this is this concept of pulling it all together. And it's amazing because when we started this, I don't think we understood the path that we were going down. We sort of didn't know what was next. We just kept going and going and going, and it grew and grew and grew. And there's some really important lessons that we learned from this. Some really simple examples. We created these little documents called like the Dummy's Guide to Holding a Bone Marrow Drive at Work. And like within a matter of weeks, we had drives at Cisco, Intel, Oracle, eBay, PayPal, Yahoo, 15, 20 Bay Area companies. And then this started getting used on the East Coast as well. And so these simple tools that you create to empower others are incredibly, incredibly impactful. The blogs picked it up. And Samir was on Valleywag. And it was amazing. We got tons of traffic to the site. And so enabling others to tell your story for you is really powerful. And then so many of these online banners got created. I don't even know who did this. It was like, it just appeared one day. And the power of a good campaign is that others will do things that you don't expect. And all of a sudden, this got published, to the sites, and people can download it, put it on their blogs, and drive traffic back for awareness and action. Some other examples of some banners that were created by folks. A lot of videos on YouTube. Just do a search for Samir or Vinay on YouTube, and we have a lot of celebrities. Cal Penn, Russell Peters, many from the South Asian community, and Samir himself. Would post his own videos from the hospital room. Funny story, being a tech guy. Up in Seattle and on the East Coast in New Jersey, he didn't have internet access in his hotel room. So he was like, I can't. He was running a company, a startup out of the hospital room. He's like, I can't do this. He himself was like, I need to get online. One of the stories is he called like the IT help desk at one of the hospitals, and he said, hey, I just need to get an internet line pulled in here. I don't have access. And they were really confused. They're like, are you staff? Like, do you work for the hospital? He's like, no, I'm just a patient here, but there's like no internet access. Like, what's the deal with this? And they were like, well, the internet access is strictly reserved for those with approval, and patients typically aren't part of that process. And he's like, you know what? I need to speak to your manager. As he speaks to the manager, and he tells him, I'm a CEO of the startup company. I need to get my stuff online. I need to blog. I need to communicate. And I don't know what he said, but like within a matter of minutes, like 2 guys in suits showed up in the room, and they started pulling a T1 line into his hospital room. And it was great, right? Because he himself was like, I need to be connected to the outside world. And it took a little bit convincing initially, but when his personal story emerged and he was able to blog about what he was doing and what his experience was like, it was a whole new sort of thrust to the campaign, because now people could really hear it in his voice, and that was really powerful. I'll play this short video that was put onto YouTube, which is a great example of a very simple, precise, but very powerful call to action that was part of the campaign. We can't really hear it. Real simple video mashup. It's a minute long. No idea who created that. Absolutely no idea who made that video. And every day we would see, in some of Sameer's other videos come up on YouTube as cross-referenced, every day we would see this collateral emerge. And it was amazing, because it just continued to add to the power of the campaign and extend the reach. Sandeep said, hey, you know, are we doing everything we can one day? And I'm like, well, I think so. Like, I'm not sleeping, you're not sleeping, like, no one's sleeping. I think we're doing everything we can. He goes, you know, we're not calling people. I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, we're not picking up the phone and calling people. So he said, why don't we get a telemarketing list? So we called, I think, Info USA or something like that. And we bought for like $150, you know, the names of like 5,000 South Asians in the Bay Area. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Folks who may be distant relatives of Sameer and a few and other South Asians, and we just started picking up the phone and calling people. So we spent, you know, a little bit of money, but effectively it was zero.
People, when they wanted to donate, we asked them to donate money to
the registries, yeah, Asian American Donor Program, NMDP, other organizations. And this is amazing. PBS had a special called The Truth About Cancer. It was featured on PBS, largely about Vinay and Rashmi. And again, just built national awareness about the campaigns. A lot of local coverage in many, many cities. I mean, probably hundreds of magazines and articles picked up their story and blogged about it and published sort of online and offline articles. And you know what? It was great, because they had the story, information, and basics and fundamentals to pick up, and they could just carry it on their own. They weren't dependent necessarily on somebody from the campaign briefing them about what was happening. And then Sameer, you know, he shared a story from the hospital. He would blog almost every few days about what he was going through, and that was really powerful. And there's a lot of examples of their blog posts online. And this is incredible. Sameer, when he got his 10 out of 10 match, and we'll talk about this in a minute, he's like, well, why don't I just put it online? So Reena, his wife, videotaped it, and they stuck the whole transplant on YouTube. Incredibly powerful if you see some of the comments for patients in the future who need transplants, to be less fearful about what this entails. So the results: 3 months, 470 bone marrow drives, over 24,000 people registered. This physically, people having to go to a location and fill out forms and like swab their cheeks in a matter of 12 weeks. Over 3,000 volunteers, part of the campaign, over 1 million media impressions, and over 150,000 visitors to both sites within this 3-month period. And the goal was achieved. Sameer got a 10 out of 10 match, and Vinay got an 8 out of 10 match. and both of them had their transplants in the fall of 2007. One of the things I'll never forget is Asia told us very clearly that, look, when you hold these drives, you should know that most often the match, if there is a match, is not going to come from your activities. A lot of what you do to hold these bone marrow drives will benefit future patients. And so when this came across, all of us were stunned because it was pretty clear, it wasn't exactly obvious, but fairly clear that definitely Samir got his match through our registration efforts. And the reason is because we sort of had dates around when that person came into the registry and sort of where they were generally located. We don't have specifics about who the donor was. And so this was amazing, the fact that all of this effort did actually result in a positive outcome in terms of a bone marrow transplant.